London Property, home of Super Prime, where you can find informative, educational and entertaining content covering all aspects of property.
Hello and welcome to London Property, the home of Super Prime. I'm your host Farnaz Fazaipour, and today we're in conversation with Charlotte Safavi, who's joining us from Virginia in the United States. Welcome to the show, Charlotte.
Thank you very much, Farnaz. It's an honor to be on the show.
So let's start by telling our listeners what you do and how you got here.
Right. So I'm a interior stylist, and the primary focus of my business is actually I work with a photographer and we create magazine content with interiors. So our clients are architects and builders and designers. And my business is called Stylish Productions. And we have a holistic approach to photographing interior spaces. I also have some spin-off private clients as well, where I go in to refresh their spaces.
So you've touched a little bit on the type of people who use your services, but can you just tell us in a bit more detail, obviously it's useful to anybody wanting to sell an interior for whatever reason, but who are your kind of main types of clients that use your services?
The principal clients who use our services are designers, architects, and builders who do high-end interiors. So we get hired to go in and assess the magazine-ready quality of interiors and spaces, and we photograph them. So our process is we get scouting shots, we go in and prepare the spaces. We may remove items or add items and create a sense of luxurious lifestyle, and then we do the photographs. So that's basically what we do. And then we take that product and we submit it to magazines.
How did you actually get to this service? Is this something that you started, or is something that evolved into what you're doing because how the world and the market evolved?
Right. So I've done a lot of different things in my life, but I am a magazine writer, and I became involved in styling through my writing. So at one point I was writing about an interior and it got picked up by a national magazine, and the person who'd made the introduction was a magazine stylist. So I ended up learning from her how to do the styling and became a person who looked for projects for magazines to photograph and publish. The industry's changed a lot because the budgets that the magazines used to have to photograph interior spaces has gone away. So I sensed an opportunity to sort of create the content directly and then sell it, because it's a lot cheaper than obviously bringing in a whole team to photograph a given space. We were the team. We would go in and we would set it up and photograph it professionally and submit it without being on staff. So that's kind of how our business evolved. I think that there are a lot of applications for the type of work that we do, including in real estate. When I look at most real estate photography, it's pretty horrendous, actually. And the type of work we do is more boutique and specialized and crafted to create a sense of space that is less generic.
So on that subject, because obviously it's become really important that, your online presence really has the maximum impact, because so much starts online these days, and real estate is no different. So the old-fashioned way versus the curated way that you work. So what did you think is wrong with the way that people actually market property and photograph property?
I think that, and I just speak to my limited experience, but when you look at real estate photography, it's all taken with very wide angle lens. It's more to show the sort of the grandness of a space. Whereas actually, when you're scrolling on a screen, let's say on Instagram, the thing that's going to stop you is going to be more of an aspirational moment. It's going to be more of a lifestyle moment. It's going to be more of an image that sort of stops you, I guess. And when we go into photograph a space, we obviously have all the different lenses, and my photographer is extremely talented. But when we look at a space, we try to break it down into components and moments as well as the bigger room shots. And I guess it's to do with just how you prop a space, what you remove, what you add. And that's really all about having the right eye. And I think that that's where my skill set comes in.
So to really get the maximum impact of what you're photographing, you need to curate a space that people want to belong to. They want to be there. So you're trying to basically make people feel that they're having that experience when they're looking at your photographs.
Right. You want an image to feel approachable, welcoming, inviting, beautiful, aspirational. But it doesn't mean that you over style a space. I'm also very authentic to the spaces that I work with. We work in a lot of very different styles of home, from extremely contemporary to more traditional. And I think my approach is always to walk into a space and look at it and just think, how can we add to this? How can we refresh, update it, but while being true to the actual space and style of a home? A lot of the houses we work in obviously have been designed by professional interior designers and world-class architects. So we're already starting with a high level of quality. So it's just a question then of how do you visualize that space? How do you create that space to be the one that people stop and look at? And I find that it's because those spaces are inviting when you stop. It's not because they're big and grand.
And that's where you're saying the difference comes in, because people sometimes don't put enough effort into photographing something that could be, cost millions to purchase. And they just kind of have the same approach towards a one bedroom flat and a mansion. Whereas what you're saying is that a lot more thought actually has to go into the visuals in order to maximize the impact that you get from the viewer and the call to action.
Exactly. It's curated. We have a high level of skills in that area. Like I said, my photographer is extremely talented. He's not just a hack who goes in and just photographs it and puts it on the listing. It's just not the way we work. We spend a whole day photographing, I don't know, a small apartment, for example. It's very layered. We prepare it before we go in. We accessorize it. We add just the right fresh elements, and sort of curate what's in the apartment and take out the things that we think don't work and layer in a few things that will enhance it. Obviously, if there's a team involved, like a designer, we work with the designer. And it's really about making the photograph look gorgeous. If there's a piece of art that I think is beautiful and to the taste of the homeowner, but it doesn't work for the photograph, that it wouldn't appeal to a wider audience, we might suggest removing it, for example. It's not personal. It's about creating a very gorgeous space that's very welcoming to a wide audience of people at that level.
So are you finding, because I always think that, things in America happen a little bit more in advance than they do in Europe. And are you finding that with this new digital world that we live in, accelerated, in recent times, that people are actually adopting a more structured and a more invested approach to photographing their properties in the US? Or is it still something that is, a luxury used by interior designers and architects and so on?
I think that it's still a little bit Wild West, to be honest with you. The value of visuals has gone through the roof in the last 10 years, in the last 5 years, in the last year. Now video's big. So visuals matter now more than they've ever mattered before. And I think that within the niche business that I've been working in, and I kind of created my business. There was nobody who did what I did in the sense that we're a produce style shoot team. So I kind of came up with that concept because the magazine industry was changing and they didn't have the budgets to, go and photograph a space in the way that they used to. So I thought, well, why not do what the magazines do? Because I was trained by them, but do it directly for the architects and designers. So that's just to sort of let you know how rapidly the industry is changing, is that our business was very small and very niche and created to meet a need that was beginning to happen. Magazines were beginning to, go from 12 issues to 6 issues to 4 issues a year for these luxury national magazines in the States. And I kind of anticipated that change and decided so I think that even within my own industry of interior designers and architects and builders, people are now beginning to realize the value of that. So there are always going to be visionary people who are the people who have hired us from, let's say, 5 years ago or 4 years ago or 3 years ago. But now it's kind of caught on. And I think in the real estate market, there is a lot of room for improvement, to be honest with you. I mean, real estate listings in the States, they do hire professional stagers who might go in. If it's a new build, they'll take in furniture, and they have stagers who go in and, say, oh, let's remove all the photographs and add some pillows to plump it up and all that. We do have that here. But what we do is we're more specific than that. Like if we would photograph an interior, let's say for a house that's going to be put on the market, those photos would look much different from the houses that most real estate companies would do, even in the States.
So what sort of costs are associated with this process?
I think from a budgetary point of view, like you said, when you're looking at selling properties that are millions of dollars or whatever, it's like, I think budget at the end of the day is something that is determined. For us, it's project by project. So it would depend on how many days we think a space would take to photograph. It would depend on travel. It would depend on, how much propping is needed. Usually in the States, the return policies are fairly flexible with accessorizing. So we often, for our photo shoots, will purchase things and then return them. So it depends, I guess, where you're shopping and all that stuff. Some outlets are more flexible with that. And then we tag them in our photos so that they get their exposure.
Right. So so depending, as you say, on the project, you either provide the accessories or remove the accessories that are there, or they're provided by the person whose project it is.
Exactly. Like I said, we would work. I mean, the budget would be, we'd have to look at the images. We'd have to see the space, whether it's a virtual tour or whatever. We do travel for work all the time. But I think that we would put together a proposal as to what our costs would be, and they would be commensurate with, industry costs for our level of business. So that's how we would work it. And then when we would photograph a space, I think the fresh elements do come into play. So we would do some floral, or we might do some, fresh in the kitchen and things like that, just to create some lifestyle moments that would be aspirational, whether it's a charcuterie board and a couple of glasses of wine on a balcony, or, a big bowl of peonies sitting on a table with coffee table books. The speak dictates what direction we take. Obviously, if it's a very clean, modern space, we would do very clean, modern things. And again, it's all about, the eye. When you talk about talents required or skill sets, my background is extremely diverse. I have a degree from Oxford University. I worked as a banker for a while, as a film agent, became a writer because I like the flexibility, and started writing about interiors and architecture because of my interests. And the styling came from that. But my eye is what drives how we frame a photo, what elements go into it. And that's really something that can't be taught, I don't think. It's just what your experience is growing up and what you've been exposed to, I think, forms your eye.
And the thing is that you coming from a magazine background, noticing a change in the magazine background, which obviously means that in your market, you have access to get some of these clients, presumably coverage and editorials.
Yes, yes. So a lot of people actually photograph with us because, 90% of what we shoot ends up in publications. Yeah.
Right. So now thinking about the majority of our listeners that are going to be London based, working at the top end of the market, I suppose if they wanted your services, then it would make sense for you to come for developments, for people who've got continuous projects, and then you would be able to take something like this back for them and kind of provide a package whereby they can have that coverage and editorials in the US market.
It would really depend on the type of project that it is and the kind of editorials. So let's say if it's a hotel, we photographed hotels, for example, where we've gone in and, shot the main spaces as well as the rooms. That's a big job. So when you photograph a hotel, then you can reach out to the appropriate magazines afterwards. Yes. If it's a residential home that's designed by a significant architect, somewhere in the countryside, that's something that we could photograph as a project and then submit for publication.
So it's not like everything you photograph, there's a story that could go into some editorial coverage. It needs to be specific, of specific interest.
Exactly. And generally speaking, publications aren't interested in houses that homeowners are selling. At least the interior design market isn't. But, there's a real estate section, most newspapers and publications. So there are outlets that can definitely be explored.
And I mean, just asking this question again, if we were to start at a price and end at a price, what does that look like? That, somebody could do this from X up to Y.
Well, it depends. If it's a hotel, it's going to be a lot. But I would say,
let's say a one-off project, of a home, of a good sized home that an interior designer's finished, and then they want you to help them showcase this work.
Right, not including travel costs, we would be at about 3,000 per day, approximately.
Okay. And actually, when you think about it in percentage terms, if you're selling a £10 million home and you get the presentation right from day one, it's actually a very small percentage of what happens.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's well worth investing in your photography. I stress that to everyone because we're in a very visual market. We're in a very visual world. So it's kind of critical, I think. If you want to stand out, if you want people to stop, a lot of people use Instagram, for example. When you scroll through your Instagram feed, you only stop if something grabs your eye.
Yes, you've only got moments to grab people.
You literally have seconds.
Yeah.
Especially with the newer generation. I mean, I think that part of looking at this is also that it's a newer generation, it's a different generation who are now reaching out for property, whether it's to buy it or rent it in London or whatever. It's a younger generation. So you have to anticipate that what worked for, our mothers doesn't work for the new mothers, and that's, I think, very important to take that into consideration, that you start and sort of refine your business to work with that upcoming market, because that upcoming market is your future.
Very interesting. I mean, I think, people just don't put enough emphasis on the importance of presentation, but, as they say, pictures say 1,000 words, and these days nobody's reading 1,000 words. At best they might be listening to 1,000 words, but no one's reading 1,000 words.
Absolutely. I don't even think people listen to 1,000 words anymore. And I'm very holistic in my approach to everything. I think that's partly due to I studied human sciences at Oxford, where it was a very multidisciplinary course, which was very unusual for an English education. They're actually celebrating their 50th anniversary this year of the course, and I will be coming to London for that. But I think that you have to look at every situation from multiple points of view. And when you look at something like a house that you're putting on the market for real estate, you have to think about not just the space, not just the square footage and the how many bedrooms and the zip code, but you've got to think about who you're marketing it to, how you're marketing it. You have to think about how to present the space. What elements does the space need? How do you present this as a whole package that covers all these different angles and have a long-term sort of holistic view of it, really, not just, wham, bam, thank you, Sam, because that can work and it might not work. You might get the price, you might not get the price, but if you present it thinking for the different angles and approach it properly, photograph it properly, present it properly to the right audience, then you can probably exceed your dreams.
Well, thank you very much for sharing with us your experience in this space, and a space that no doubt is going to become a lot more important in this side of the pond. And hopefully our listeners will find this chat with you informative, and we'll be able to reach out to you in our experts directory. So thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you, Farnaz. Always open to answering any questions anyone might have.
Thank you very much. So to get in touch with experts like Charlotte and others to help you in all aspects of your property requirements, then head over to our experts directory at londonproperty.co.uk, and don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter so that you can be kept abreast of our very interesting conversations that we have on a weekly basis with experts like Charlotte. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the London Property Podcast. Head over to londonproperty.co.uk and subscribe to our newsletter to receive latest updates.